Hi guys, and welcome back to another Hoya tips video. Today I'm going to be talking about something that I've mentioned in passing in a few of my previous videos, but I've never really elaborated on, mainly because it's much more of an abstract concept. And it's not really something where there are specific cases that you can learn or anything like that. But nevertheless, I've realised that it's something that can be very efficient and very useful as a skill to have for a lot of different other techniques. And so I'm going to talk about it in this video today. And that technique is pairing pieces in the U layer. I think it is more useful the bigger the cube, and it's especially helpful for dealing with pieces that are oriented and that would otherwise require much longer solutions. Now, like I said, there aren't necessarily a larger set of cases for this technique, just a few simple triggers that I think will deal with most of the common situations that could come up. And beyond that, it's just a matter of setting up to those triggers and also recognising when it's even worth using this technique at all. And also, as normal, all of these triggers that I'm going to show you work lefty as well as righty, but I'm only going to show them righty in this video. So first up, there are cases where both pieces are in the U layer already and both are in the same orientation, like this. Here on 4x4 we've got these two wings that are both in the U layer, both oriented, and otherwise would not be a great case. When both pieces are misoriented, you can generally just insert both pieces one at a time or with a cancellation and it will still be very efficient. But when they're oriented, your solution might be quite a bit longer, so I'm only going to demonstrate here with two oriented pieces. So on 4x4, when we're dealing with two wings, the two oriented wings must be in adjacent U layer slots. So as you can see, we've got one in the back and one on the left. Also, it's important how they're positioned relative to each other, because we could have two cases here. We could have them when they're in adjacent slots like this, so this one in the back and this one to the left of it. Or we can have a case like this, where we've got the same piece in the back, and this time the other piece is to the right of it. And now what we can see here, these two pieces are diagonal from each other. They're right next to each other like this, whereas before, they're much further apart. And it's this case that we're going to want to pay attention to, because this is the one where you can very easily pair them in the U layer. The reason for this is because we don't have to use inner slice moves and we can just use regular wide moves. So it would be a lot nicer to execute. So from this angle, we have our right wing in the back and we have our left wing in the left. And what we can do to pair them is just R wide, U, R wide prime, like that. And you can see how this works. We're just going to hide this wing in the back with the R wide move. Doesn't affect this. So now we can move this across to here with a U move. And then we know when we bring the other wing back down with the R wide prime, we've made this block. To be able to tell whether or not you can just use wide moves, you can see if, by hiding the piece in the back with an R wide move, is the other piece affected or not. And in this case, it isn't, which means we're good to use just regular wide moves. In this case though, as you can see, if we do our R wide move, the other piece also gets moved along with it, which means we can't just use wide moves now, because nothing will happen. And this is also the case for when the two pieces are opposite in the U layer. Here, as before, an R wide move moves both of the pieces, which means we can't use wide moves to pair them. Now if you do get this case where both the wings are diagonally adjacent, then you can still pair them in the U layer, but as I said before, you have to use inner slice moves. So what that looks like from here would be an R slice to hide that wing in the back, then a U prime to move the other wing over, and then an R prime slice to bring it back down. Now, although I showed you there the slice moves as one single action, I don't think that's how you should execute them in a solve, because it's a bit more difficult and it does require a slight grip shift from here to here. And so the way I think you should execute slice moves, if you need to do them, is like an R wide and then an R prime, and then a U prime, and then R wide prime R, something like that. But as you can see, the way I executed that turns it into a 5-move solution instead of a 3-move solution. So in my opinion, it's much less worth it. And finally, if the pieces are in opposite slots in the U layer, there really is no easy way to pair them in a shorter number of moves. So you're better off just dealing with them in a different way. Then on 5x5, the same thing applies when you're dealing with midges as well. So here, as you can see, we've got our oriented midge here and we've got one oriented wing in the back. And in this case, we can just do exactly the same. We can do R wide, U, R wide prime to pair them together. You'll be able to recognize that by doing this R wide move, this midge is not affected at all. And you can see that this piece, when it's connected to this, is going to need to go on this side. So this means from this position, we can do a simple wide move trigger. Whereas from something like this, again, the pieces are not quite diagonal this time, but they're much closer than they were in the other case. And here, again, we would need to use slice moves to pair them. Then you can do this with blocks as well. So here we've got our block from before and our other wing is now here. And again, same thing, they're in adjacent slots and they're not directly next to each other. So we can do, in this case, 3R wide, U, 3R wide prime to pair them. Now I didn't mention this earlier, but for this case, when you've got two pieces that are close to each other and you need to pair them with slice moves, you can slice either piece. So if we were to hide the wing in this case, then it would look like small r, u prime, small r prime, like that. And if you prefer, if you get it from this angle, say, you can also hide the midge with m prime, u, m. That works the same way. Now, something that's different on 5x5 to 4x4 for this technique is that there are some situations where you can pair two pieces in opposite slots. For this case, it has to be a wing and a midge. You can't be two wings like before because that doesn't work. But with a wing and a midge, if they're in opposite slots, as you can see here, we've got our wing in the back and our midge in the front. If we do the R wide to hide our wing, then actually our midge in this case doesn't move. So we can now just do a U2 to put it in the back and know that when we bring the wing down with an R wide prime, that's made our block. It's important to note that this doesn't work for when the wing is in the front and the midge is in the back, because if we were to hide our midge with, say, a 3R wide move, as you can see, this doesn't affect the wing here, but when we do a U2, this 3R wide prime move is going to affect it. So now these are not paired still. So if you do want to do it from this angle, you can do an M prime, U2, M, a bit like before. However, I'd see no reason to do this when you could just do it from the other angle and not have to use slice moves. And of course, this doesn't work if you have a block of two pieces, because any move that you do here is still going to affect this, and some of them might even break up the block, so you don't want to do that. And then just quickly on 6x6, I won't show on 7x7 as well, because from here it's just the same. We've covered both the main two piece types. Yeah, from here you can just do exactly the same idea to pair pieces. So here, if we look at these two pieces, we've got an inner wing and an outer wing, and they are going to need to go next to each other. As you can see, this piece, if it goes in this edge slot, will be here, so it will make the block. So we can just do the same as before, like that, to pair them together. And for this specific case, you could also have them in opposite slots. That does work on 6x6 and up, because we have an inner wing and an outer wing, and the inner wing in this case is going to be very similar to the midge in that it will need to go here. So when we hide this piece, this does not get affected at all, and we can just do a U2 and then bring this back down. And again, you have to be careful with this. It doesn't work when we have our inner wing in the back and the outer wing in the front, because like I showed you on 5x5, this piece is going to get flipped and not made into a block. Then here we have our block and we have the other inner piece. So again, we can just do the same thing, pair them like that. And again, important to note here, these two pieces, they're too close to each other. This piece needs to go here, and that's the wrong side of this block. So if we were to do a wide move, then it gets affected as well. So we'd have to use slice moves for that. Finally, one last thing, if you have two outer wings that are oriented in the same slot, and then either two paired inner wings or a midge, they'll act as the same in this example, you can do an M-slice trick to pair these three pieces. And you can technically do this from either angle, but one of them's a lot nicer than the other. So from this angle, it would be something like L wide prime, R wide, then a U2, and then undo, which is not ideal. Instead, from this angle, you can just do an M prime slice, then a U2, and then an M. Now, if two pieces in the U layer are in different orientations, you can also pair them in a simple wide move trigger, but in this case they have to be in opposite slots. So as you can see here, we have one oriented wing in the back and we have one misoriented wing in the front. They're in opposite slots, and this should be easy to see. We can just pair them in one R wide move like that. Then we can simply do a move to preserve the block and undo the slice. Although here, unlike before, you can do the U move in either direction and it will still preserve the block. So we can do a U, or we can do a U prime. We can't do a U2 because then it will get broken up. However, one of these will keep the pieces in the U layer and one will bring them into a front slot. So for example, if from here you slice up with an R wide move, then a U prime will put the block into UL and it will stay there when you bring this other slice down. However, if you slice up and then do a U, it will bring the block into UR, and then with the final R wide prime, it will come back down to FR. Now this could be used to your advantage, as this could mean that the two pieces are now just one move away from being solved in the D layer. For example, if we didn't have a solved cross edge here, then they would be just a one move insertion away. However, other times it may be better to keep them in the U layer. So that's a case-by-case decision to make. And then if you have, in this case, the oriented piece in the front and the misoriented piece in the back, you can still do exactly the same thing. You can pair them with an R wide move. Then you have a choice of a U or a U prime to preserve the block. So a U prime keeps it in the U layer, and a U will bring it down to FR like this. And in this case now, it would actually be favourable to do this, so then we just have one move away from being solved. Okay, back to 5x5, and again this same idea works as long as you have two pieces that will eventually end up directly next to each other. And again, if they're in different orientations and in opposite slots, like you can see here, this wing is misoriented and the midge is oriented opposite it, then we can just do an R wide move, one wide move to make the block, and then either a U or a U prime. In this case I'll do a U prime, undo, and we have our block in the U layer. Then here, this time we have our midge that's misoriented and a wing in the back that's oriented, and here we can make a block again with a 3R wide move, take it out, preserve it, and then a 3R wide prime. And then if we have our oriented piece in the front, our misoriented piece in the back, again, one move to build the block, another move to preserve it, undo, and then we can, insert or whatever we want to do. And again, this does also work when you have two wings that are solved and in the same slot, and the midge opposite it. And in this case, the midge is in a different orientation, unlike before when they were all in the same orientation. But here we can still do a similar idea. We can use this technique. As you can see, in one M prime slice like that, we're going to make our whole edge in the back. And then this time, because we've just used a slice move, not a wide move, doing a U prime or a U, either way, the edge will end up in the U layer, preserved. So, yep, that works as well. And of course, if the pieces are in the other orientations, like this, as you can see, we've got our oriented midge and our two misoriented wings. Same thing works. One slice move to pair the block, preserve it in the U layer, and then undo the slice. And then, of course, the same idea can work on 6x6 and 7x7 as well with any of the piece types. So here, as you can see, we've just got one inner wing that's not paired up with the rest of the block. The rest of the block's all here in the same orientation. The inner wing is in the opposite orientation, so we can just do one slice move like that to make our block, move it out of the way, then undo the slice. One thing I also do want to show quickly that's definitely less obvious, but does still work in basically the same idea, is that you can pair pieces not even on the first slice of the trigger, but on the final slice of the trigger. And because if we were to take this case, for example, this is a 5x5 last cross edge case, and I use this solution for this case because I think it's the fastest, and it's a good demonstration. So here we have, as you can see, two pieces in the U layer in opposite slots, and they're in different orientations. So in one move, they could be paired together to make a block like this. However, as you can see, we have our left wing solved. So if we were to do an L wide prime like that to make this block, then this piece is going to get unsolved when we do a U or a U prime. And what we could do is pair the block, preserve it like this, for example, and then, solve this piece with an F prime, and then insert this block here. But another way we could do this is by using the R wide slice. And this might be confusing at first because doing an R wide here doesn't actually affect either of these two pieces. But what's going to happen is we'll need to undo this eventually. So we'll need to do an R wide prime. And so that will bring whatever is here down to here. And so if we imagine if we did a U2 here, this piece would end up back here. And then with the slice, it would come down to here. And after the U2, this midge is going to be in the front. So here, having done our R wide, we do a U2 like this, and then the R wide prime, that's going to bring this wing down, and that's going to make a block with these two pieces. And now we can just insert them like that. So as I said, that's a lot trickier to see, and there are definitely very few situations where something like that is going to be useful. Generally speaking, if you can do that, you are also going to be able to do it the normal way by making the block in one slice move first. So probably just stick with doing that if that's what you see first. So then there are going to be situations where you compare pieces where one is in the U layer and one is in the DF slot. So like the previous situation, because the pieces are in opposite slots relative, in this case, to the front face, the pieces will need to be in opposite orientations for this to work, like you can see here. Now, when a piece in DF is oriented, like this one is, then you could already consider it solved. So I think there are very few cases where it's better to pair it in the U layer than just insert the other piece or two pieces into the D layer, because It's the same number of moves, so inserting the pieces into the D layer like that will almost always be a better idea. However, when the piece in DF is misoriented, like this one, and the U layer piece is oriented, then you could pair them with something like R wide, U, R wide prime. And especially if this is not your last cross edge case, you have a lot more freedom to insert the eventually solved edge into the side or the back rather than the front. And this could mean you avoid having to do an awkward F2 move. For example, instead of having to regrip, do an F2, regrip again, and then insert the misoriented piece, you can do a simple trigger and then insert into the left or to the right with something like an R2 or an L2, which is much nicer to execute. And also, you can continue to have your DF as your empty slot for your next cross edge. Finally, there are many ways to set up to these basic cases in 1 or 2 moves. I would say that any more than 2 moves to set up may not be as worth it, as at that point there may be another solution of similar move count, but if you can set up especially in just 1 move to a case like this, it could definitely be worth doing. Setups are especially worth it when you have much fewer pieces already solved, as you won't need to undo the setup moves afterwards. Here we have an example on 4x4. If we look at green, we've got this piece here, and then our other piece is down here. And as you can see, we've got blue solved in the back, so this green piece being here is not correct relative to blue. That's important because if it was correct, then I would probably just insert that green piece next to this. But because it's not correct, something we can do instead is we can see that this piece is oriented, as is this piece. And if we were to bring this piece up to the U layer, it would be here, and then the 2 pieces would be set up relative to be paired in that one simple trigger. And then in this scenario, something we could do is we could see that our last edge is going to be red and it needs to be here. So we could bring this to the front to have our open slot on the front and then insert green into the side like that. Then now if we look at this red edge, we've got this piece here, both of them are oriented again. And here we don't have anything solved here. So we can just bring this to the U layer in 1 move like that. Again, they're set up. We can pair them in just 3 moves. And now in this specific case, because we have an unsolved slot here as well, what we could also do is bring this piece to the U layer in 1 move, but this time with an F prime. Now, as you can see, this piece is set up opposite to this other piece, and now they're in different orientations. So we might be able to see, for example, that we've got orange here, so red needs to go on this side. So we can do an R wide to pair them, and this time we can do a U to preserve the block. R wide prime is going to bring it down to this slot, and now this block is just 1 move away from being completely solved. Then similar idea here, looking at red, we've got this piece here, and then these 2, this block in the back. And in this case, what we don't want to do is an L prime move to put this in the U layer, because now even though all the pieces are the same orientation, they're all oriented, these 2 are right next to each other, so we'd have to use slice moves to pair them up. What we can do instead is we can use the fact that we've got an empty slot here, we can do an F move. Now this piece is set up opposite in a different orientation to these. We can just pair them with a simple trigger, R wide, U prime, R wide prime. And now we can see we've got orange here, red needs to be this side, we can just insert with an L2. Then here on green now we've got 1 piece here and our other block in the back. And what we can do here is we can do an F prime to bring this to the U layer. Now these 2 pieces are in opposite slots and they're in different orientations, so we can pair them with an R wide. And now here I can see, because this block is misoriented now and it needs to go in the front, what I'm going to do is a U move and then an R wide prime to bring it down here, so that I can then just solve the whole edge with an F move. And then a nice way we can extend that to a case like this, which I've shown you before. We've got 2, in this case, 2 inner wings on a 6x6. They're both oriented and they're in adjacent slots, but they're too close together, so we'd have to use slice moves to pair them up. Or do we, because we've actually got this edge free and this edge free down here. So what we can do in just 2 moves, we can set up to the other type of case by doing R prime, F prime. That misorients this wing and puts it in the front, which means it's now misoriented and opposite this oriented wing. And so then we can just pair them up with 3L wide prime, U, 3L wide, like that. So while this may seem like a trickier technique to practice and look out for, as always, the best thing you can do to get more used to implementing these triggers is untimed solves. There are many cases, especially early on in the cross edges step of your solve, where you may be able to make blocks of pieces in very few moves and utilise the freedom of your unsolved slots to set up and insert very efficiently. It's also possible, even likely in some cases, that there will be multiple ways for you to pair the same pieces in the U layer. So doing untimed solves and trying out as many different ways as you can see to solve the pieces will help you to further understand how this technique works and then implement it into your solves. As I've said, it is quite abstract and definitely a situational technique, but it can be useful on any size puzzle, and variations on these triggers can also be applied in several 5x5 last cross edge cases, and in the approach I discuss in my recent 6x6 and 7x7 video about building blocks to reduce down to an LCE case. It's a really useful skill to have to expand the creativity of your solutions, so I hope this video has helped you show the potential for even greater cross edge efficiency. So that's all for this one, hope this has helped, and thanks a lot for watching.